Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This week it's time to look into the untempered schism and be driven mad by the constant drumming as we take a look at the Whoniverse. Now I've been thinking a lot recently about video games, in particular when I was coming up with last week's video. The link to that will be up here somewhere up in the cards, where I talked about some of the games that made me. Now while I was looking into that, and in particular Mass Effect, one of my favourite games, an idea kind of lodged itself into my brain. And that idea was for a Doctor Who AAA video game. Now first of all, to begin, I don't think I ever actually want this game to happen. And the reason for that is, a game like this requires a lot of development and a lot of investment in it as well. Not only that, but I just don't think AAA video games is particularly high on the BBC licensing team's list of priorities. However, if they were to put this effort in and all of the time and invest all of the money that would be required, this is exactly what I would want to see from a Doctor Who video game. Now, Doctor Who doesn't have a huge legacy in video gaming. There have been a few mobile games, there's also been sort of some interactive browser-based story-driven games, and of course the Whoniverse's introduction into LEGO Dimensions, where you can play as quite a few of the characters in that game. However, there's never been a truly huge blockbuster standalone title from Doctor Who, and I think it's something that really could be worth exploring. Again, not that I think they ever should do it, but if they did, here's a few of the ways that I think that they could please the fans and really get them involved and make this game a success. Okay, so first off, how exactly would this game play? Now, as I mentioned, I was thinking about this game while I was thinking about Mass Effect, and sort of as such, a lot of my inspiration came from there. I think that this game would play very much like a BioWare title, just without some of the violence. Obviously, you've got Dragon Age and you've got Mass Effect and stuff, which rely a lot more on guns and weapons, but I'll get to that in a second when it comes to the actual mechanics. For now, however, what I mean is the main framing device. And I think the TARDIS in this game would function sort of as the Normandy in Mass Effect, or as the Ebon Hawk in Knights of the Old Republic, or I guess if you want an example outside of BioWare, you could have the Top Hat ship from Mario Odyssey, or in fact, any of the hub worlds from the 3D Mario games. Now I think that sort of space exploration, of course, is a necessity in these games, and I think because of that you definitely need a kind of hub world. And what better way of doing this than including the TARDIS in the game? I think it's a perfect way of anchoring you sort of to your own sort of home base without making you have to be just sort of set on one planet. Because of that, the Doctor Who IP lends itself really well to this kind of game. On top of that, because of the nature of Doctor Who and the fact that the interior of the TARDIS changes all the time between Doctors, I think that this space could be really customizable. By that I mean there could maybe be like layout changes if you wanted, or at very least just the general aesthetic and the look of the TARDIS could be changed and altered by you. You could also include keepsakes from some of the missions, maybe some stuff that you bought maybe at a market on a random planet, and you could just sort of really make this space your own, and I think that would be a really good addition. However, if you didn't want to play that game that way, and the reason why you want to play a Doctor Who game is to experience the real Doctor and the real TARDIS, you could choose from sort of any of the other Doctor's interiors. Maybe these could be unlockable, maybe they could be DLC if you wanted to go down that rabbit hole. But however it came about, I think that this is a really good idea and a really good way of sort of tying it into the actual series. So I previously touched on the ability to explore the galaxy. Now, as I mentioned, I think this would be a really core aspect of the game. And I think, again, much like in Mass Effect or in Super Mario Galaxy, you'd be able to explore a number of different planets. Some of the bigger ones would be bigger open world kind of things with merchants and bars and stuff, maybe your Gallifreys, your Raxacoricophalopatoriuses, or even your Scaros. And then some planets you'd only really visit for the one-off mission that you don't really come back to again. These would be maybe your Trenzalors or your Cloms, for example. Not only that, but it sort of gives a wide berth for you to be able to introduce your own new planets if you wanted to, if you didn't want it to be too connected to the show. And also you could just include the big back catalogue of various different planets that do appear in the show. Even if you can't fit all of them in, just sort of their presence there, the fact that they're very on screen with their title and everything, maybe a sort of quick description that alludes to one of the episodes that it's featured in. It would be a really nice little Easter egg and a really big plus for all those big Whovians out there that might pick up this game. On top of the huge range of planets that could be included, there could also be all manner of cameos from various different people and creatures from across the Doctor Who archives. Maybe you have a mission on Earth where you have to help out Mickey Smith and Martha Jones with something. Or just sort of during your adventures, maybe you come across River Song or Captain Jack at various points. However this works out, I think that could be really good additions, and it could be a really nice way of tying it back into the show again. And not only that, there's all of the monsters that you have to face as well. The Daleks, the Cybermen, the Macra, the Slovene, or whatever it might be that's included. I think this would be a really good way, and the Doctor Who basically just has this big collection of things that they can rely upon that would work really well for a game of this magnitude. Now on to some more sort of narrative aspects. And to begin with, I think the story would start with a regeneration. Most likely, I think, from a Doctor that you never really see. Maybe this first part is played in first person or something like that. That way it doesn't place it anywhere, it doesn't mess with the canon, and you don't sort of add in a sort of Jodie demise outside of the show, which obviously wouldn't go down very well. However, not only that, but it also gives you a good way of introducing your own Doctor. At the point where you regenerate, it brings up a character customization scene. Very similar, in fact, actually, to the way that Skyrim works. You don't see your face for the whole opening prologue bit, and then as soon as someone asks about you, that's when you get to actually design your character. And I think something exactly like this would work really well in this. Not only that, but with the customization of the TARDIS that I mentioned earlier, you could also go into like your wardrobe room, pick out whatever outfit you want to wear, whatever you want to make your iconic thing. Obviously this can change as well and that kind of stuff. And not only that, maybe there's also even a function to design your own sonic screwdriver to fit your whole aesthetic. I don't know how exactly this would work, but I think a lot of customization options is exactly what fans would love from a Doctor Who title. Now, of course, this is strong wish fulfillment, and I'm not sure that everyone would even necessarily love to be their own Doctor. A lot of the reason why fans love Doctor Who is because they love a particular Doctor, and I think that that's something that they could still do with this. I think that although the main story would focus on whatever your own regeneration of the Doctor is, I think maybe in the post-game that's sort of unlockable through different things that you do, you could play as different Doctors, or more likely, let's be honest, it'll probably be DLC. However, you can unlock various different Doctors, all of the past iterations, and play sort of missions that are designed specifically for their Doctor. I think this would be a really good way of uniting a lot of the fans who like various different Doctors, and a really good way of sort of making this a much bigger thing than just its one standalone storyline. Now onto the companion, and I had a kind of interesting idea for this. I think that basically it all comes down to how you play the very first mission. Now, you've just regenerated, and sort of what has become a trope, especially in the more recent Doctor Who, you probably crash land in 21st century Earth. It always happens. It's pretty much a sort of bona fide trope at this point, but I think obviously this is probably where the game would start off. Now, you sort of probably meet a group of people. Let's think similarly, I guess, to the Titanic episode. You've got quite a large group of people that you meet up with at the very beginning. And in a way that will sort of determine how the game goes further on, and kind of an example of what the game will be like going on, I think decisions are going to be really important. Every single decision that you make in this first mission will determine who makes it out of this alive, and therefore who becomes your companion at the end of it. Now, I think this is a really good way of deciding on who will be your sort of main partner throughout the show. It could be any one of this group, pretty much. Maybe not everyone, maybe a couple of the people there are red herrings, or they're people who have to die as a plot device, or maybe they are the villain. Who knows? I don't know exactly how that would work. But pretty much any one of this smattering of people could be your companion. That will change how the game's played later on. Maybe they'll add different things to your team, they'll have different skills and all that kind of stuff. And not only that, it sort of builds a really good bond really early doors for you. I think it's a really great way of doing this, and it's quite an interesting aspect, I think, that would really add something to sort of your personal connection to this game. Now also on those lines, I don't think this would be the end of your TARDIS crew, at least not necessarily. Now, as I mentioned, I think there'll be a lot of flexibility in this game and you'll be able to play it pretty much however you want. But I think in true BioWare fashion, and it's something that I love about BioWare games, you'd be able to collect a group of people. Not only that, of course, you'd be able to sort of curry favour with some of the people I mentioned earlier, your Jacks and your Marthas, who might be able to help you throughout the game and maybe make the final mission easier. But I think in a much more robust way, you'll be able to pick up people that stick around on your TARDIS, and you can make your team as big or as small as you want. If you want just one person, like classic sort of David Tennant and Rose kind of thing, or if you want a full TARDIS team like the current iteration with Jodie and so forth, that's fine. Play the game however you want, it doesn't really matter, just how you want this Doctor Who experience to be. Now at this point when I was thinking about it, I started to get sort of caught up in my own hype. I started to believe that this would be the best game ever. And some of the things I came up with, I think are pretty cool. The issue is obviously you need a game developer who will bring it all together, but anyway, that wasn't the biggest problem. For me, the biggest problem came in the sort of actual mechanics of the gameplay itself. It's all very well effectively making a Doctor Who version of Mass Effect, but the problem is the Doctor doesn't do guns. Now, I'm not saying guns and weapons and that kind of stuff is essential for a fun game. However, it's just another thing that the developers will need to think about a little bit more. A little bit more thought will need to go into some of the mechanics and that kind of stuff, because you can't just rely on a firefight as being sort of the content. Now this is a bit of an issue because obviously with things like Mass Effect and stuff, they were able to put in so much thought into all of the world building and that kind of stuff because they could just rely on a fairly easy shoot 'em up sort of level. Now, this is something that obviously would take its toll on the developers of this game, and it would be something that really would require a lot more thinking. But here's how I think they should do it. Now the way I see this working is basically to rely a little bit more on the smaller aspects of RPGs. So all the things like hacking terminals and that kind of stuff, and the puzzles and the problem solving and all of the various different things that you have to do that are aside from the shooting, would be sort of relied on a bit more. They'd be developed a little bit more, fleshed out a little bit more, and then you have to rely on your mind a little bit more in this game than you would in the average RPG. Now I think this is a big selling point. This is exactly what Doctor Who is known for. It's about the creative problem solving that the Doctor often comes up with. And I think that this would be a really good sort of translatable part into the thing. It would make the game much more clever, and if it's done well, could really make it critically well received. Although, I also wouldn't completely get rid of sort of violence and stuff like that. If you want to play the Doctor as a bit more renegade, a bit more like the Master, that's absolutely fine. If you want to take on weapons, if you want to physically intimidate people, that's fine, that's how you want to play it. At the end of the day, Doctor Who at the minute in the TV show is exploring with different sides of the Doctor. As we saw with John Hurt's introduction, a different aspect, different side of him that we've not really seen, that maybe he sort of blanks out from his mind. I think that this gives us a lot of scope to play with and sort of makes the game can go in many different directions. Makes it a proper sort of RPG in that respect. Now of course, as I mentioned, this is quite a challenging thing. It requires a lot more development and a lot more time in thinking about all of these puzzles. And as someone who is a dungeon master in a D&D game, I can really testify to this is time consuming. I wouldn't envy doing this job. It'd probably be quite fun, but it would take a lot of time to get this done. However, I think it'd be really worth it to make this game really sort of stand out. Now on to how the story itself would work. And I think that this is actually fairly simple, to be honest with you. Games like Mass Effect and stuff lend themselves to a sort of Doctor Who kind of format. I think that it would take a much more sort of Stephen Moffat era vibe though, if I was going to be a bit more specific about it. There would be very much a sort of obvious through narrative throughout all of it. There would be main story missions that you kind of have to do that lead to accumulation. Maybe where you sort of end up facing down Davros or the Master or some sort of big bad like that, one of the big iconic villains. But also there would be sort of a few more side quests that like have a kind of hint at this. Like maybe it's a sort of fairly main mission, but it isn't directly tied to the main narrative. And then on the side of this again, there'd be even more peripheral sort of side missions that have completely no relevance at all. Maybe it helps you pick up some of those favors I mentioned earlier. Maybe they don't, who knows? But it would help add to the sort of scale and the grandeur of this game and really flesh out this universe. Now that's what I think would make a really good Doctor Who game. However, I just thought it'd be a really fun idea to look into. There's no real reason for it. There's no rumours about a Doctor Who game sort of out there floating about, at least not to the best of my knowledge. I kind of wish there were a little bit, but again, I don't want them to do it because I don't think they'll do it justice. Anyway, not the point. Would you play the game that I set out here though? What do you think? Are there any other features that you might add to my creation, or would you do it completely differently? Also, are there any other franchises or properties that you'd like to see me do this for? If so, let us know down in the comments, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe of course, so you don't miss out on any new content. Thank you so much for watching, and unless time goes all wibbly wobbly, I'll see you next week.